After the 2 days he left for Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that the prophet has no honor for his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine, and there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. Go, Jesus replied, your son will live. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 in the afternoon the fever left him. Then the father realized that this was the exact time which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee.
Good morning. I don't often say this. I should say it more, but please, if you've got your Bible with you or you use your Bible app, open it up to read along with us. We're going verse by verse through the text to the book of John, so please follow along. It's nice to have it on the screen, but there's something about having it in your physical presence, whether you're a hard copy person or a digital version, either one. It's just a great thing. I wanted to just draw your attention to the worship this morning. I love when things are a little different. There's a lot of reasons why I love that. I love the intimate nature of kind of the unplugged set, if you will. Many of us in our culture, that kind of got invented, the unplugged sessions. We probably remember the TV network that came up with that idea and started following it, and it became this trend, if you will. But it's a beautiful thing, and here's what I really love. When we come to church on a Sunday morning, our mission, our purpose for being here is to focus on Christ. And what can happen unintentional when nobody does this on purpose, but people can come to church service and make other things in the service their God, the thing they come to worship. And if you alter or change or move or make those things different, then people kind of throw a fit because they forgot the reason they were coming was actually to worship Jesus. And so our goal, and my goal in particular, is to make nothing in this service sacred except for Christ alone. And when we focus on Christ alone, whatever we do in this service is focused on Him. And so when we bring communion, whether it's at the beginning of service, in the service, middle of message, whenever, it doesn't matter because it's focused on Christ. And if that's a mentality that we can all agree to, then things can change and be different. And everybody's like, yeah, because I'm here to focus on Christ. And nothing's going to distract me from that. Kind of a part of what the whole book of John is about. The details, that's not the important thing. The bigger picture is what matters to John. Our community groups are going strong. They're out there. They exist. We want you to be a part of them if you're not already. There's some that have a few people. There's some that are full. There's some that are actually just kind of starting this very week. And so you can jump in anytime. You just jump on the church's website, bccbrazil.org, click the Connect tab, and right there you're going to see what groups are in existence, and you can be a part of those. And those are going to continue. This is a brief season this fall, but they're going to continue throughout into the new year, and we're excited about doing this and what God has in store for us, in the future. It's great. We've heard great things already about these things. So here's the passage today. Okay, we're at the end of chapter 4 of the book of John. And he's going to tell the story of two very different men. He's going to enter us into the healing world of Jesus. Now, it's likely, probable in fact, that Jesus has had other healings already occur. But John hasn't recorded them yet. Okay, so he introduces these things for a very specific purpose, and we'll kind of discover what they are. Today, the two men that are involved with this story, the first one comes to Jesus in a very desperate position. Jesus was literally his last option, his only hope, if you will. The second man that John introduces us to is the exact opposite. He has absolutely no hope whatsoever at all. He's given up completely on hope. And so our job today is to look at these two men and the stories that John tells and how Jesus relates and reacts to them and figure out, where are we in this? How does this apply to us? How does this apply to the people we know? How does this apply to my life? Now, you just heard this. After 2 days, he left for Galilee. Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. And so when they arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, Jesus. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival. They had also been there when he was there. Once more, he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. You see, Jesus and his disciples have spent the last 2 days prior to this journey to the region of Galilee, breaking down all kinds of social, ethnic, and religious walls between the Jews and the Samaritan, beginning a conversation that hadn't happened in literally hundreds, if not 1,000 years between these two people groups. Now, this didn't fully open the door to the Gentile world. That wasn't Jesus' role in this. What it did do was it opened the minds and the hearts and the eyes of the disciples to the reality that the person they're following and the message that he's bringing is not just for them. It's not just for the Jews, that it is for everyone. And he set this example for us of how we need to reach out to people, even those that are the vilest of offenders, if you will. The opposite of the very person you and I are, those are the exact people Jesus is calling us to in this moment. And he was revealing that to the disciples. And so as they left the area, we see a little bit later here, and you'll see a lot coming next week, that Jesus is getting some pushback from the religious leaders. His words, his actions, and his following are getting to be a little more than they would like for him to have. And so they're looking for a chance. So what Jesus does is he strategically, and this is something you'll see if you follow the pattern of Jesus' ministry, he doesn't do things randomly or by chance. He strategically removes the ministry away from Judea, away from Jerusalem, where all those people are located, and he goes back to his home area, the region of Galilee. And then John throws in this other little odd fact. We don't know if Jesus told them this on the way, maybe. Probably that would be a good guess, on the way back to Galilee. Or if maybe he revealed it later and John's just thrown it in so we know. Hey guys, I wanted to let you know that a prophet really doesn't do very well in his hometown. Now, Jesus was leaning on the prophets of old who their hometown killed oftentimes. They wouldn't listen to them. They wouldn't respond to them. They would ignore them. And we're talking the Elijahs and the Elishas and the greatest of these. Jesus is just reflecting this truth. And what's really strange is even today, a pastor who goes back to his home church, the one that he grew up in, sometimes has a very, very difficult time doing ministry. Jesus' words ring true even in 2018. And so, here we have it. Jesus came back home anyway. Many had seen and heard what he'd said and done in Jerusalem. Why? Well, because they were there. Some of the people he was meeting with in Cana would have seen and been at the wedding in Cana where he changed the water to wine. So they knew, and they wanted to see more. They enjoyed the show. They believed the signs. The signs were real, they were true, and they believed in them, but they weren't willing to make Jesus their Messiah. They weren't willing to call him their Savior just yet. And what's really weird, again, Jesus is very strategic. What's really weird is this was actually advantageous to Jesus. In this moment, the fact that the people he was ministering to weren't really going to believe was kind of a good thing because it didn't draw attention to him. At least not the attention that would draw the eyes of the Pharisees and the religious leaders. So he was kind of working undercover amongst his own people. But there was one. It says there was one. You notice, we don't know how long he was here. We just know that he was in this region, and then somebody came to him, but it wasn't someone from there. A prophet has a hard time ministering in his hometown. A man from Capernaum came, and it says there was a royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. Capernaum was a town on the Sea of Galilee about 20 miles away from where they were in Canaan. And this official had somehow heard about Jesus, and desperation is what brought him to the point where this was the last effort. This was the last thing, the only thing that might possibly work. If there was any hope for his son at all, then it laid in the hands of this man they call Jesus. Now, who was this royal official? We don't know. We don't know for sure. All the commentaries suggest the same thing, so I will relate that to you. He was a high-ranking either civil or military official under Herod Antipas. Now, Herod, lots of Herods. Okay, it's kind of like Caesar in the Roman world. There's lots of Herods. This was the Herod that just had executed John the Baptist, to give you an idea of where he stood in life. We don't know whether this man was a Jew or if he was a Gentile. That's left out of the picture. But I want to ask you to consider something with me. Consider that he was indeed, in fact, a Gentile. Because if he was, it reveals an incredible thing that Jesus just did here in the last few chapters. You see, Jesus was just in Jerusalem not that long ago, witnessing in the land of Judea. Then he took his ministry out of Judea and he went to this place called Samaria, and he ministered to the Samaritans. And now he's taking his ministry even further north. And if this is a Gentile, then he's taking his ministry literally to the ends of the earth, to the other people that existed, telling them that Jesus, yes, the salvation is from Jesus. He is a Jew, but it's for everyone. And if you know the very beginning of the book of Acts, then you might remember the words Jesus spoke to his disciples before he ascended into heaven. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses. Where? In Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and the ends of the earth. You see, Jesus is literally, if this man was a Gentile, he's literally enacted this verse and shown them step by step what it looks like physically to do this very thing. But here's what matters in the moment. Jew, Gentile, doesn't matter for this man. He was a dad, and he was desperate. His son was lying there near death. This is a cause for concern. He was a man of great wealth and great power, and so you know he'd exhausted every possible option that he had within his community, within his town. And so there's something that caused him to seek Jesus out. Maybe he himself had heard him speak. It's possible if he was a military official, it's possible that he'd been around Jesus. Maybe he'd seen him perform a sign. Maybe he just caught word of who this guy was and had a sense or had heard about a healing that he had performed. And so he was going to seek him out. The bottom line is this: the man had some level of faith that Jesus could help him. If. You see, when this man had learned that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and he begged him to come heal his son who was close to death. Envision yourself at the scene. What would you be doing if you were asking Jesus, talking to Jesus? Maybe some of us have been in this scene where there was a loved one that was in critical condition and we begged Jesus for healing. This is an emotional event. We can't remove that. We can't remove the realness of this event from the people's lives and just read this text on a page. Jesus replies, unless you see signs and wonders, you'll never believe. And the royal official said, "Sir, come down before my child dies." The man explains the situation to Jesus, and Jesus begs Jesus to come home with him and heal his son. And Jesus' response seems a bit harsh on the surface, almost like he's not really addressing the man's need. We wish Jesus would have said something like, "Man, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to tell me more about his condition." But can we realize something about Jesus for just a moment? Did Jesus already know this son's condition? Yeah. He knew everything that was going on. He knew every step that man had taken on the way here. He knew every thought he thought on his way to approach him. He did not need to address the situation. He was fully aware. So he took a moment to address the people that were around the situation. These people were gathered around waiting for the next part of the show. They had their lawn chairs, they had their popcorn, and they're just waiting for Jesus. What's he going to do next? We can't wait and see. It's going to be awesome. They're waiting for one more sign. But Jesus is telling them, another sign isn't going to convince you. You're not going to truly believe just because of another sign. So his response isn't directed at the man. It's directed primarily at the crowd. The official was in need. He came to the only one he believed could help. And he actually seems to hear Jesus' response, but just kind of move past it as he pleads for his son's life. His only goal is to express the urgency of this situation. Jesus, I need you to come, and I need you to come right now. To then Jesus shifts gears and he responds directly to the man with very few words. He simply says, "Go. Your son will live." That's it. It says, John wrote that the man took Jesus at his word and departed. All right, so you've gone up to Jesus. You want him to heal your son. You want him to come home with you, raise your son back to life, if you will. And Jesus just says, go. Your son's well. That's not what you wanted. You needed Jesus to come and do and see and make it happen. You didn't want just him to tell you. That's not what you were looking for. He wanted a rock-solid, absolute money-back guarantee that Jesus could do this. And Jesus just says, go. How would you respond? All he received was Jesus' word. Don't miss the power in that, guys. Don't miss the power that there are in Jesus' words when he speaks into our lives, when he speaks through the scriptures. when he speaks to us through people, don't miss the power of Jesus' words. The boy didn't slowly raise back to life, slowly regain color, slowly have his fever drop. No, he was instantaneously healed. The moment Jesus' omnipotent power arrived, he was healed. Also note that Jesus didn't honor the wishes of the crowd. If Jesus said, okay, I'll go with you, the crowd would have followed him. They would have gone to Capernaum. They would have seen this miracle, and they would have been like, oh, awesome show. What are we doing next, Jesus? What's the next act? See, Jesus stole that from their very eyes and said, okay, here, you got to believe. Yeah, I healed that kid. I did. Do you believe me? You see, he was challenging them. Was it only a miracle? Was it only a sign if they saw it with their own eyes, or could it extend the 20 miles away to Capernaum? Jesus was speaking the truth. But had the son been healed? What about the man? What if it didn't work? What if Jesus had spoke those words and he gets home and the son is still ill? What would he do? How about you? The royal official didn't argue. It says he departed to go back home. What would you have been like? Your son, your daughter, your relative, your loved one is in hospital over in Terre Haute, 20 miles away. Jesus tells you, they're healed. What are you going to be like on that 20-mile drive to Terre Haute? How fast are you going? Be honest. How fast are you going to get there to find out what happened? See, there were no cell phones. Mama didn't text the royal official, hey, son, Johnny, doing great. Just a moment ago, he just came back to life. I don't know what happened. He didn't have that. He had a 20-mile hike up rugged terrain to get over to Capernaum. What was he like on that trip? You could only run for so long. Was Jesus speaking the truth? Had his son actually been healed? We don't know. We don't know. But on the horizon, as he travels home, he sees some familiar faces. Verse 51, while he was still on his way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. When he inquired as to the time his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign, John says, Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. His servants saw the miracle happen. They had no idea what was going on other than he'd left to go find this Jesus and see what would happen. They couldn't wait for their master to get home, so they ran out to meet him. The boy is well. The father's response, can you just tell me, when did this happen? And instantly he realized, oh my goodness, that was the exact moment that man, whatever his name was, oh yeah, Jesus, that guy said that, and that happened. Uh-oh, something is up. And it says they went home. Jesus' words, his power, it transmitted across all time and all space to a whole other location, teaching us Jesus' physical presence is not necessary for miracles to take place. Church, Jesus' physical presence isn't necessary for miracles to take place in our lives or our loved ones or anyone else. He's given us the Spirit. It's here all of the time. The royal official exhibited one level of faith by seeking Jesus in the first place. I believe he might be able to help me. But he experienced a whole deeper level of faith when Jesus said, go. Just trust me. Your boy's healed. He accepted Jesus' word as truth. And as a result, that sign that was performed transformed not only the official, not only the son nearly back to life, but his entire household as well. They all believed, it says. Shocking that John would use that word, huh? The family believed that Jesus is the Messiah. You see, Jesus shows this man that we are all saved by grace through faith. This man had absolutely nothing to do with this. He didn't do anything right to make the God give him some kind of gift. It didn't happen that way. But he believed that it was possible. And his faith is bolstered. It is strengthened by that belief. He saw the evidence and now believes even further. This comes to us as well. When we choose to believe, the evidence of that belief will continue to mount and mount and mount throughout our entire life. And our faith will grow. And we will mature in that faith. As we continue to look at Jesus through the eyes of this man named John, some of us in the room can begin to get a little frustrated because he goes to this man, he heals his son, and then what happened? What's next? Did the family convert the whole town of Capernaum? Did everyone believe in Jesus? What's going on? John, tell us, please. Did the same thing happen that happened with a Samaritan woman where a whole community came to know Jesus as a result? To which John simply reminds us that, hey guys, it's not about the sign. As a matter of fact, it's actually not even about the people. Those are both very important to Jesus and to his narrative in this story, but the focus that John is on is 100% on Jesus. The signs are important, but he doesn't want us to get bogged down in the details. They're not the main event. He wants us to believe that Jesus is God. And he doesn't want us to get bogged down in all those other little things that happen around this. He wants them all just to point, yes, there's this sign, and look how it points to Jesus. In the next scene, Jesus returns to Jerusalem. Now, for those of us that like things in order, this isn't in order. It's later, sometime. John doesn't even give us a time frame. Jesus' popularity continues to grow amongst the people. He's beginning to get a little bit more resentment from the Jewish leaders. We do not know how long it is from the healing of the royal official's son to this healing at the pool of Bethesda. John's not concerned with chronological order. If you are, I'll offer you a real quick piece of advice. This is a wonderful book. It's called a chronological Bible. A lot of people don't know these exist, but it takes all the stories of the Bible, Old Testament and New, and it puts it in the best order we can get historically. And so, for example, in the New Testament, when you read a miracle that might be recorded in all three of the Synoptic Gospels, you read part 1, 2, and 3 all together. So you read Matthew, Luke's, and Mark's accounts of the same miracles back to back to back. It's kind of fun to read things that way. So if you're into that, you can get it online, you can buy a copy, however you want to. But I love reading things that way because it helps my mind grasp things just a little bit better. All right. In this sign, Jesus is going to show an incredible amount of compassion and sympathy and mercy to a crippled man, a lame man. While at the same time, he knows when he does this that he's going to pick a fight with the Jewish leaders. John doesn't even reveal the name of the festival Jesus has gone to in Jerusalem because the celebration doesn't really matter. Here's what matters. This healing took place on a day they called the Sabbath. So John chapter 5, verse 1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. We found some pictures online of the actual ruins of this place. It was a grand entrance into Jerusalem on the northeast side of the town. The name of the pool is called Bethesda, which means house of mercy. There were actually 2 pools located there. They were probably formed and supplied by an underground spring system that existed there in that part of Jerusalem. The pools between them were covered. There were 5 large colonnades or columns, and then kind of a porch roof, if you will, over all of it. It was a giant covered porch. And it is probable that at the time of John, when he wrote this, you could physically go to that place because it still existed. Yes, the Romans had destroyed a lot of Jerusalem, but because that was probably also a Roman worship site, they probably hadn't touched that phase just yet. Now here's the thing. Early biblical scholars didn't believe that this existed. They didn't see any ruins or any evidence of this place, so they thought the author just kind of embellished things a bit, kind of wrote up the scene just a little bit. It was so far that direction that many scholars believe it discredited John as being the actual author of this book. But in the late 1880s, archaeologists actually discovered the actual pools, including the 5 colonnades that existed around the pool, just proving the accuracy of biblical texts. And you'll find, as time goes on, archaeology just keeps unearthing things that go, yep, the Bible's right. They wrote it down exactly how it happened. Now, there was something unique about these pools. There was a belief that when the water was stirred by an angel, that the first one to get into the pool would be miraculously healed of whatever their ailment was. In the time of Jesus, these pools were probably a worship site to a pagan god named Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine and health. It's likely that those that had gathered around that pool with hopes of being healed were not looking to God, the God of the Jews, for healing. They were trying to be shown favor from the son of Apollo. And this sets up an interesting thing, an interesting confrontation, if you will, between Jesus and the false gods of the Romans. And John doesn't comment on that. We're left to interpret what might have been the result. But because of the reputation of this area, it says in verse 3, there was a great number of disabled people who used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he'd been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" That's a key right here, guys. Do you want to get well? For 38 years, this man had been lame. unable to walk. That could have been his entire life. Maybe not. We don't know. Either way, a long time. He was cast off by society. We don't know how he got to and from the pool each day. Maybe his family had brought him. Maybe his family had completely rejected. Maybe it was friends that were willing to bring him down to the pool and leave him each day. But Jesus, much like he did with the Samaritan woman, he sought that man out. And he asked him a simple question. Do you want to get well? Now keep in mind, Jesus could have walked up to the pool. All of these lame folks, the cripples, the blind, the deaf, the disabled, were all there. He could have made a big, giant announcement. Hey, everybody, do you want to be made well? But he didn't. He only chose one. Can we ask that same question? For those of us in the room that are believers, can we ask, why did Jesus choose me? Why did he choose me to reveal this truth to? Why did he choose me to forgive? Why did he choose me to show his grace and mercy to? Why did he choose my neighbor, my coworker, my family member? Why Jesus? Why did you choose me? I want to challenge you to really think about that, because I think there's a purpose. I believe that all of those people, because some of you in the room, there were names that began to pop in. Why didn't he choose them? Why didn't he choose this person? That person seems like such a better person than who I am. Why didn't Jesus choose them? Maybe every person that entered your mind, as I begin to share those things with you, is actually a calling on your heart for you to reach out to them in the same way Jesus reached out to you. You see, Jesus chooses everyone. He wants all of us to be his sons and daughters. You chose to believe. That was your choice. You were free. You could do that. And now that you've chosen to believe, Jesus says, okay, great. I can now use you to reach those. Don't miss that moment. It's huge. In this scene, he saw something in that man, and we'll talk in a second about what that might have been. But if you were in that position, if you had been an invalid for 38 years and you've come to this pool, hoping maybe one day you could get in just the right moment, be healed, and someone walked up to you and said, hey man, would you like to be made well? What would your response be? My guess is it's probably one of two things. If you truly had hope that it was possible for one day you to be healed, then you would have excitedly answered, yes, I want to be made well. Can you do that for me? But probably most of us in the room, if we had dealt with something for 38 years and someone came up to us and said, hey, would you like to be made well? We would have sarcastically rolled our eyes and said, yeah, sure, great. Not going to happen, but yeah, I'd love to be. That'd be just wonderful. Who are you? What do you do with that? There's no chance of that actually happening to me, so leave me alone. Nothing else has ever worked. Who do you think you are that you can do something in this situation? Now, don't give the invalid grief. He had no idea, no concept of who he was talking to. He does remind me of something, though. His response to Jesus' question, it reminds me, I was a middle school teacher for 8 years. It reminds me of a middle schooler who didn't get their homework done on time. It was an excuse. Listen to the man's reply. Sir, I have no one to help me in the pool when the water is stirred. When I'm trying to get up, someone else goes down ahead of me. He basically tells Jesus, it's not really possible for me to be made well. You see, there's no one that can help me get in the water. Every time I chance, someone else beats me to it. It's kind of like he's saying, no, it's just not fair. But notice, does he ever answer Jesus' question? Do you want to be made well? He never actually addresses the question, and I believe there's a reason for that. He's lost hope. There's no way he can ever heal himself by stepping foot in the water. It seems there's no one that can help him. So his hope of being healed has faded over the decades at this point in time. And I think maybe this is why Jesus chose him. Without saying it, the man confesses the following things. 1, he can't be made well. 2, he has absolutely no hope. 3, he cannot transform himself, and he cannot be made new on his own, which Jesus would completely agree with. He's at that point in life, and it's not until you're sick that you realize you need to be made well. Jesus completely ignores the man's comments, as he usually does. Remember, he already knows what the man's thinking. And so he's like, okay, I get it. Excuses, I understand. So Jesus says, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. And then John records these words. At once the man was cured, and he picked up his mat and walked. Now, please notice, Did the man ask to be healed? Did he? No, not in any way, shape, or form. He did not ask. He had no expectations from this conversation with a stranger that anything good would become of it. Did Jesus go up to him and say, man, if you would just have a little more faith, you could pick up your mat and walk? No. No, he didn't. Jesus just simply healed him. He said, get up. That was it, 2 words. The power in the words of Jesus, 2 words, can change a man's eternity. It's incredible. If God, there's a quote that Kristen came across, listened to a podcast recently, and I loved it because it applies to this man's scenario perfectly. Apply it to your life. If God always met your expectations, he would not have the opportunity to exceed your expectations. This man's expectation or hope was maybe one day to possibly get in the pool, and maybe that would heal him. Jesus shattered those expectations with a complete instantaneous healing and no use for that vile water that his hope was in. A stark contrast to what the man thought could happen. And I believe in that moment when Jesus said, get up, the man had a choice. He had he'd at least not walked in the last 38 years. He couldn't walk. Yet for some reason, something caused him to believe. And at once, notice, John didn't say, well, the guy slowly stretched and kind of stumbled around. No, instantly he got up, picked up his mat, and took off. It was immediate. The man had just confessed he had no ability to move. And yet he was responding to the command of Jesus as if he'd been walking his entire life. It explains that. But you see, nowhere is it revealed that this man believed in Jesus. In fact, he doesn't even know who healed him. It was a demonstration of God's sovereign grace. God showing grace and mercy to someone who did not deserve it, and for that matter, didn't even ask for it. Church, we've got to be careful about this because God still does this today. The Bible clearly tells us that God will show mercy on whom he will have mercy. That's just the way it is, and we don't have any power or control, and we can't view it and go, well, that's not fair. That man didn't even ask to be healed. Jesus doesn't deal in that world. He will do what he wills. He will do it. And as a result of this happening, a fight begins between him and the religious leaders. They've been looking for something to take Jesus to task on, and in this moment, Jesus opened the door. Now, Jesus had disappeared into the crowd after showing this incredible grace, mercy, compassion, and healing to a man who had absolutely no hope in life. And the Jewish leaders disregard everything that just happened as they approached the man. Listen to their words. The day on which this all took place was the Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, it is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat. But he replied, the man who made me well, he said to me, pick up your mat and walk. The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. So basically, the Pharisees come up to him and say, hey man, you can walk. I don't care. Who told you to pick up this mat? It's the Sabbath. You're not allowed to pick up this mat. What are you doing? They don't care at all about the man. Remember, I told you a few weeks ago, there's more than 600 additional commandments that the Pharisees had added. Here you go. You can't pick up your mat on the Sabbath and carry it to another location. The 4th commandment, as God stated it, was remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And now, even though you haven't walked in 38 years, you can't pick up your mat and take it home with you. That's against the rules. There are those rules again. Did you notice in his response to the leaders, the man's still making excuses? It wasn't my fault I picked up my mat, guys. That guy, he made me do it. What guy? Oh, good question. I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. I don't know who it was that healed me. But in this case, something was different. Jesus seeks him out again. And in this case, Jesus wasn't done. He had something much more important the man needed to hear. It says, later Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, see, you're well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen. And the man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well. Jesus seeks him out a second time to follow up with this miraculous healing. Hey man, I can see your life has been restored to you. That is incredible. You're getting around just fine. But here's the thing. There's something you need to do next. Translation, it's great to be able to walk for the first time in 38 years, but I got to tell you a deeper truth. It would be better for you to be an invalid your entire life and to go to heaven than it would to be fit as a fiddle, skipping off today and cast your soul into hell. There's something deeper than just this physical act. Seek God, seek the forgiveness that he offers. I restored your physical body in this moment, and that's great, but there's something even greater that you've got to be understanding. There's something even greater that's been done for you. For our world today, Jesus continues to seek us out until we believe. He does not quit on us. He does never, ever, ever give up on us. And what's weird is, much like the story of Nicodemus, the man doesn't appear to respond to Jesus and his words. All I can do is envision the guy listening to Jesus and kind of smiling a little bit, nodding his head like, okay, I see where you're going there. You see, this man would have had some knowledge. He met him in the temple, so he would have had some knowledge of the religious system and the order of the day and what Jesus was talking about. And notice, the next time that he talks with the Jewish leaders, his story has changed ever so slightly. You've got to look at the details to see the change. Because both of the statements the man made to the religious officials are true, but the second one points in a slightly different direction. Listen to what the man was asked, and listen to what he told the Jews. He was asked, who is this man who said, pick up your mat? His story back to them was, it was Jesus who healed me. You see, this sign illustrates the saving power of Jesus. Even when all hope is lost, like in the case of this invalid man, Jesus still can and will save. And so look at these two different men and how they might relate to us. In our lives, for us, is it a matter of trust? Do we trust Jesus like the royal official? When he speaks the words, are we willing to just go and believe? When he says get up, even though we've never been able to walk, will we rise to our feet? When he opens the door to serve, when you become aware of a need, are you willing to go and meet that need? Or are we going to give reasons and excuses as to why we can't, like the lame man did when Jesus asked him the simple question? When Jesus places someone firmly in your heart and in your mind to go out and reach out to, are we going to go? Are we going to do what Jesus has done for us? It does seem like a very simple question. Do you want to be healed? But I can tell you the honest to goodness truth. There are people in this room who have been telling Jesus no for decades. Jesus comes with the same question today. Do you want to be healed? Of what? Could be anything. Could be anything. From addiction, whatever. It doesn't even matter. Do you want to be healed? And so we ask you, is it time to say yes? Is it time to cry out to the Lord? Unlike the invalid, is it time to cry out to the Lord and say, yes, Jesus, please heal me. If that's you today, we want to meet with you. We want to pray with you. We want God to put you on that path to healing. Now, here's the cool thing. At any moment, God could instantly heal you, just like he did the royal official's son. Or he could use your brothers and sisters in Christ to walk you through that healing process throughout the rest of your life. But for those of us that have already accepted the grace, the mercy, the love of Jesus, and we fully realize it in our own lives, did you know that every single day of our life we go out to the pool? Same pool. There's invalids lying all around it. Those that are lame, those that are discouraged, those that are depressed, those that are going through addictions, those that are going through life alone and have no hope. And every single day, the dark forces of this world are trying to destroy their very soul. And we have a chance every day to go to them and ask them the question, do you want to be made well? I would challenge you to do that beginning this week. Begin asking the question. Not everyone will say yes. It takes time sometimes. But God's preparing someone for you to ask that question to, and they're going to say, yes, yes, I would. Can you help me? And you might say no, but I know one who can. So if either of those are you today, please come forward. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for this morning. I thank you for the chance to be in your house, the chance to worship, just kind of strip all the things away and make it as intimate as possible as we come before you. I thank you for the example that Jesus gives us through these two miracles. A man who came by faith alone, believing that you could do something. And Father, was left with the challenge of you saying, hey, I did something. You just have to believe it's true. Only to find the results to be exactly as you spoke them to be. Father, to a man who didn't have any hope, a man that thought life had passed him by. There was no chance for him, whom you showed your grace to in spite of his negative opinion, and who walked away from that scene, believing on some level that you are indeed the great healer, and that you are the Messiah. Father, I pray if there's anyone here today that has never come and answered the question, yes, I want to be made well, that they come forward today to seek that healing.